As you've all probably heard by now, Adult Swim, Hulu, and Squanch Games have cut ties with Justin Roiland following domestic abuse charges. But Rick and Morty and Solar Opposites will not be cancelled. They announced that Rick and Morty will be recast, and the crew is continuing production on season 7. Now, this news on Rick and Morty's future has been met with some mixed reactions, some excited for the future of the series, and some viewing it as the final nail, putting Rick and Morty in the coffin, arguing the series was already going downhill in quality, and without Justin, it just won't be the same. But there's something a lot of people aren't realizing with this situation. Justin Roiland's getting way too much credit for the quality of Rick and Morty than the amount of work he actually put in. Yes, Rick and Morty was originally a collaborative effort between Justin Roiland and Dan Harmon, and with Roiland being the guy who actually worked in animation, I mean, he directed and co-wrote the pilot, he made the original weird Back to the Future short, it's reasonable to assume that he'd be just as involved with the show to this very day. I mean, why wouldn't he? He already voices Rick and Morty and a bajillion other characters in the show. But the reality is, Roiland's basically just been a voice actor for the show since basically season 3. Alec Robbins, writer on High on Life and narrative director at Squanch Games, had this to say on Twitter. To my knowledge, Justin's only real creative involvement with Rick and Morty, since probably season 3, is that he recorded the voices from his own basement. I'm told he wasn't welcome in the writer's room because of multiple covered up internal WB investigations, re sexual misconduct. And honestly, that checks out. The last episode Roiland actually had official writing credit on was season 3's Morty's Mind Blowers. Also, Adult Swim has always released a behind the scenes video for each and every episode since season 3. And if you look, Roiland hasn't appeared in a very long time. Definitely absent from any of the last 2 seasons, which all kind of goes to show that Adult Swim was likely preparing for all of this to happen and likely wanted Justin out sooner than later. But of course, this is all just speculation. Justin nor Dan haven't even been showrunners for the last few seasons either. Mike McMahon and Scott Martyr have actually been the showrunners over the course of the last few years, though not at the same time. To keep it a buck, if there was really going to be a drop in quality with Rick and Morty, it was going to happen already, which obviously people have argued it already has. The writers have changed, the showrunners have changed, though Harmon has still been involved, and these are changes we've seen happen since season 4. The only thing that's going to be different are their voices, and even then, those really aren't like revolutionary. They're iconic, but they're super precise, and I would argue it's going to be pretty easy to find somebody who can imitate it. I mean, there have been plenty of Rick and Morty impressionists over the years, online, in everyday life. I've heard people try to bust out that impression in front of me, and it's never landed, but they've gone for it, you know? Speaking of which, a lot of people have been recommending TikTok impressionist Sean Kelly, who Roiland even admitted nailed the Rick and Morty voice, and at this point, it would be cool to see him at least join the cast in some way. And yeah, I'll admit, he does a pretty solid impression.
Wait, oh my god, we're supposed to go vegan, Morty.
Wait, vegan? Why would we go vegan, Rick?
I was telling him, I'm like, dude, you're so close that like we could record stuff and I don't think people would know who was who.
Like Johnny Tuccello said, it could be fun to see 2 different voice actors for Rick and Morty, just so they can actually riff off each other in the booth. I mean, a lot of the humor from the show has like a whole improv vibe, so an actual back and forth between 2 actors and not just one man, yeah, that'd be pretty dope. I'd love to see that. Also, the odds of them finding one person that can do both voices so perfectly well just seems like a reach, which is why everyone's gunning for Sean Kelly, because it's crazy he can do that. Like, Roiland admitted they have the same vocal cords, so maybe it's meant to be. I guess we'll see. I'm sure they'll make the new voices a pretty big deal. I mean, this is the show that has a new fully animated Wendy's ad on a yearly basis. Look, this is the best case scenario because bottom line, people get to keep their jobs. And in an age of corporate mergers and tons of animated shows getting left behind in the streaming age, that's a rarity. But let's be real, Adult Swim wasn't gonna let this cash cow die without a fight. I mean, Pocket Mortys, come on. The anime is also still gonna be a thing. I guess Roiland was never involved to begin with, which just makes sense because of how wildly different it felt. I'm excited. I think it's gonna be cool to see. Bottom line, even though he created it and those crazy voices and characters originated in his mind, Rick and Morty is just simply bigger than Justin Roiland. It's gonna be a little weird to watch the show moving forward knowing they have different voices, but for the fans who are invested and want to see more of these characters in their journey, I'm happy they get to see it through to the end. Shows have gotten away with recasts before. Gumball changed their voices like 5 times as their voice actors grew up and their voice naturally changed. And they just decided to go all in and just like make it part of the show. And I'm wondering if Rick and Morty is going to do the same. I mean, for a show that's so meta and fourth wall breaky, constantly winking to the audience, I wouldn't be surprised if they make their voices changing like a whole thing. But we wanted to make this video because I feel like the general public just isn't aware of how little involvement he currently has in the show. I mean, when you have the richest man in the world tweeting that he's the heart of the show, even though that's like literally incorrect, we just felt the need to say something. I'm also wondering if they're going to go back and redub Justin's voice. It's a big if, but I guess it just depends on the severity majority of what continues to happen in the real world. I guess if the idea is to find identical voices, then technically they could go back and swap them out, and like ideally we wouldn't even notice. Again, this is all speculation, but I'm just wondering. At the end of the day, as dark and frustrating as this situation is, it's important to realize how much hard work goes into making cartoons and video games like this. Even though somebody's name is attached to it, or they appear to be the face of it, or in this case the voice of it, doesn't mean there's so many other people working hard behind the scenes, and in this situation, actually doing most of the work. Either way, we're just gonna have to wait and see what happens. But we'd love to know what you guys think. Who do you think should be recasted? Do you think it's gonna work? Are you gonna keep watching the show? Is this when you dip? Let us know in those comments down below. This was a cartoon news video. I'll see you next time. Peace.